Alright, let's inspect and repack the rear axle hub. We'll start by pulling the inner race out along with the ball bearings in the cage. Gonna want to remove all the grease, dirt, clean everything really well. I usually pop them out, set them aside, and then go one by one and roll them through the paper towel, kind of pinch them between your fingers to wipe all the grease off, and then set them aside once they're clean. And check them out while you're doing this. Make sure there's no deep scratches, or that they should not be discolored at all. If they're dark or have some color to them, then they've been exposed to excessive friction heat and need to be replaced. Which means a new hub assembly for this car. Wipe all the grease off the cage. Be careful with it, it's plastic. Those look good. Set them aside and work on the other end of it. Get all the junk off that outer race. There's a grease seal right there that we need to pull off. Check out and clean. Slides off. Take a big rubber coated washer. Just want to make sure it's still pliable. There's no cracks or splits in it. Give it a good cleaning. Whoever used that one looks good. And just clean up the flange and the race surface there. We'll inspect that in a minute. Let's go ahead and get the other ball bearings out. Just wiping up what I can here. Alright, flip it over. And to get this side to get the outer bearing, outer race out, you'll have to push the ball bearings up enough to get enough space for it to clear the inside groove of that race. And to get those out, you're going to have to pop out 4 or 5 of them to make enough room for the whole cage to come out. There's just enough clearance for the cage diameter to fit through the outside of the hub. And you should be able to work it at an angle away from where you pulled the ball bearings out. And again, clean those, wipe them down, check them, look for scratches, grooves, discoloration. These all look good. That is the outer bearing race that the axle nut pushes against, and that rubber flange is the only grease seal there is, so make sure it's not ripped and it's still pliable, or you'll have a lot of grease migrating out. So let's check out the bearing race surface on this outer and see how it looks. What you're going to want to do is reflect light off of it, roll it back and forth, looking across the surface where the ball bearings roll, and look for scratches, any changes in the light pattern that are very noticeable, or any dark coloring. That one looks fine. If that is the original hub, it has 222,000 miles on it. I'd say it looks pretty good. Now that race has discoloring right there. Tiny little dark ring all the way around diameter of the race. There's no galling or scratches or anything in it, so I'm gonna reuse it. It just means that that race is going to start to develop a gap right there, and bearing war is going to start. And once that happens, it's time for a new one. Hopefully I'll get 20,000-30,000 miles out of it before it starts. Same thing on the outer. The inner race for the outer bearing has the same thing. It has a heat ring. Very, very narrow, but it's there. Pretty good shape actually for 222,000 miles if it's the original hub. It looks like it is. Good enough to put back together. You're going to start with the outer bearing. And you're going to, just like taking them out, you're going to have to set a few ball bearings in the race. Wiggle it in there, and then you can pop the rest of them in. And I just roll them, drop them down in there, pop them in, turn it, drop, pop, and turn. That's all of them. This is high temp, high pressure well bearing grease. Make sure you use the right grease or it will fail, and so will the bearings. Pack in as much as you can from this side. Then we're going to take the outer race, load it up. That's all the grease you're going to get on this side. So smear it on really thick. And to get it to drop back in, you're going to have to push up on the ball bearing cage there, lift it up enough for the race to clear the ball bearings, and then the whole thing will slide down into place. Push and wiggle. It'll go down. There it is. And then you can pack that cavity right there with grease once it's in. Push it down in there. Can't have too much. Now for the inner bearing, I've tried both ways, and it is the easiest if you place the bearing and cage assembly on the race and drop the whole thing down. It just slides right in. So again, load everything up with as much grease as you can fit in there. There's still some space in there. A lot of the grease fell through though. Fell through the gap. I'm surprised that they didn't put a grease fitting on this hub to allow you to insert grease between those bearing races right there. All cleaned up. Let's go put it on the car. When the axle nut goes on, there's no washer. There's a flange on the nut, and it is torqued 219 foot-pounds, which is ridiculous, but that's what's in the book. I guess if you don't weigh 219 pounds, you may never get there. Don't forget the dust cap. Just got these rotors in from EBC. They had to cast them and cut them. They were made in June. I guess they don't stock this size and configuration, but they definitely put the lacquer on it. Super thick coat. Make sure you get it all off. I also have new rotors and pads for the front as well. Those actually were stocked. I just had to wait for the rear ones to come in. All clean. And a big mess to clean up. And when you're putting the rotor on, you're going to want to slide it into caliper bracket, and you'll have to wiggle it around to get enough space to get it to go in there, and then just line up the alignment bolt for the wheel, and that'll hold the rotor on for you. And the pad with the spring goes into the bore of the piston. We need to take that safety spring off the caliper. Hardly any gap there for the rotor, so we're going to have to screw the parking brake adjustment screw all the way out to the pads touch together. That will seat the adjuster into the piston, and then back it all the way out to get as much gap as we can between the pads. These pads have a break-in coating on them, which makes them thicker than OE spec, so they were a little tight going on. The rotor actually started scraping some of it off when it went on. Pretty good gap there. That's all the way back. That's all we got to work with. Pull the dust caps off so we can put the guide pins in once it's on. It fought me a little bit. Probably should have taken a file or something and smoothed that break-in compound down a little bit. Some wiggling and tapping got it on there. Now for the guide pins. Slide them through the rubber bushings there. Tighten them up. Pop the dust caps on. Snug them up. Oh yeah, don't forget the plug for the parking brake adjusting screw. Now for the parking brake cable. Just run it through the holder. Once it's seated all the way in, pull the lever back until it grabs the ferrule on the end of the cable, and that's it. It's a self-adjusting screw setup. I have the other side set up already, so we'll just go in and ratchet the parking brake a few times to seat it all good. Then you're done. Don't forget the caliper spring. That's it. There you go.